Hi, everybody. This has to be fun, or it's not worth doing. So I'm going to do my best to make it fun. Including this year, I have embedded humor in the predictions, just for your edification and enjoyment. I'd like to, for those who haven't been here before, mention that we actually take these things seriously. So all of you have probably read 50 things on what's going to happen in 2026 by various reporters and pundits. We're not pundits and we're not reporters. We try to make a science out of this, and I think it's succeeded over the last 2,000 years. And so we use pattern recognition and pattern discovery to prove that you can, in fact, based on risk, create portfolios of future events that are accurate. And we have a pretty good record, and we do this publicly, and we'll do it with you publicly too. I'm telling you this so that you kind of get a feeling for what it's like to live with us. And actually, I think my children would back me up on this. It does change how you see the world. And our dinner conversations, much to my wife's great dismay, represent this. And so when we start talking about China or Russia, Bear's an expert on Russia, Evan is an expert on China, things get very intense very quickly because we're looking at all these patterns every day and trying to understand what's going to happen. So with that in mind, I'd like to do something also different from prior years. I'm going to go through this. We're going to do the countries. We're going to do the landscapes of technology and countries and so on. But before we do that, I'd like to just kind of touch on a few things that are megatrends so that kind of guide your thought. And then we'll kind of work our way into this. And in each case, there'll be things that I'll read to you because they're really specific. There'll be things that I'll just kind of randomly talk about because I think they matter. So under the idea of megatrends, here's what I hope you'll get out of this. A new view of the 2026 world in some way or other. The arc of AI going into the future. A new view of that. Interpreting the recent Chinese coup rumors. Get into that. Comments on country and technology landscapes. We'll do that. Top 10 predictions. We'll do that. A bonus prediction. And, of course, the newest and most exciting discoveries in theoretical physics while you're having food and drink upstairs. And that's voluntary. You don't have to do that one. Heaven knows that most people don't want to do that. So the theme for this year is accelerated instability. I bet you all agree. That's what it is. And when we look at the top forces in all the things that are being destabilized at the moment, I see two things, China and I see AI. There are thousands of things, but if you just took two, it would be China and AI. There are three megatrends that I want to touch on, and I'll chat briefly about them. One is, I call it AI devolution, the true costs and benefits of large language models. So we get a little technical here. LLMs, you may not know what that is, but ChatGPT is an LLM. The true costs and benefits of these things are not always obvious. I will mention that for the first time ever, I think, the Wall Street Journal this morning said that LLMs are thought by many leaders to be a dead end. This is a big effing deal. So we've been saying this for about 5 years. Finally, front page of the Wall Street Journal. And this is very, very important. So I'll come back to it. That means, to me, we can touch on something which is really important to me, and I think it's important in the idea of whether you're looking at money or whether you're looking at success in any way that you could measure, the value of truth. We lost it. We lost it. And I don't even know whose fault it is. But we lost it. And you trace it back to Sam Altman, you can trace it back to a number of people who lied about something they were fully aware was not true. And it was a fraud, and we all, in the Valley particularly, I want to talk about the Valley, we all went along with the fraud. It was going to be making us all money, so what the heck, let's ship it. Well, that's how he got fired. But he got, thanks to Satya, he was back in a day and a half. So this commitment worldwide to ship a product which can kill people, knowingly, it created a point in history for me. And I think it's the same kind of point that some people compare to our current administration, where if facts don't matter, if science doesn't matter, if there's no such thing as truth, everything else is up for grabs. You have no guiding light. This is something which we lose as a society, and it's very hard to get it back. there's no happy ending if we can't at least agree that there are facts, that there is science, that things do matter, what you say matters, and that what you ship matters. You don't ship stuff that kills people. So I think AGI is dead. It's a dead end. And we have Yann LeCun, who you probably have heard of from Meta, quitting and saying it's a dead end. He had just built this for Meta, which is Facebook. We have Demi Hasabi, who got a Nobel Prize for this stuff. He just last week, according to Gary Marcus, said it's a dead end. So that's interesting. He's the guy at Google who invented all this. So we have people who really know what they're talking about saying that's a dead end. You're not going to get AGI, which stands for Artificial General Intelligence. That's what was being sold to everybody in this room by Sam Altman, and they're saying you're not going to get it. It doesn't exist. You have diminishing returns and never going to get that particular dream out of that particular technology. I call it AGBs. What's happened here is we have a technology which is predictive typing on steroids, and it's really good at language. Very good at language. It could be DNA language, but it's very good at language. And so what that means is it's very good at language. For those of you who remember Watson at IBM, it was the biggest screw up in all the history of technology. I think 60,000 people got fired by IBM trying to make it true when it wasn't true. It did something good with Jeopardy because it read Jeopardy. It didn't know anything. It couldn't think. It wasn't creative. It wasn't intelligent. It ended up in a waste bin in Francisco Partners in San Francisco, and they're still selling it today out of IBM. What a joke. That's what we have really together. Even though we have other parts of it that are transformers and so on, it's really the same thing. You have a reader. It's a great reader. So what it learned wasn't how to be a genius in science. It doesn't do that. We'll never do that. What it did learn was how do we behave. It's read our mail. It read our books. It read our movies. It read our stuff. And it's perfectly qualified to tell us who we are. But, as we all probably are aware, we have problems, we have issues. And one of them is we don't know what we're doing all the time. So you can't necessarily trust that for what you've been told it would do. Another idea here is that there are three great powers now. You've seen it, it's obvious, everybody knows this is true. Today's political instability comes from sources, and those sources are interesting. And they include stories of global theft. So if you look back, that saying where all great fortunes come from a crime, there's a crime behind it. Well, if you look at Russia, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the KGB was the black market. The black market became the real market. The KGB became the FSB, and the KGB didn't die. It went out across the world, and they became thieves. And there's this beautifully integrated klepto story about the entire story of Russia, where they integrated the KGB and the FSB worldwide. And all these cartels in Mexico are talking to each other with the Russian guys, and it's all ongoing. It's fascinating. If you look at crypto and you ask yourself, now give me the real story. Well, I won't say it that way. Various people create crypto. What are they doing with it? Who are the primary users of crypto? Not just as a retail investor to hope for the best, but what are the uses here? Well, clearly the dark web, clearly selling drugs, clearly selling guns, clearly doing all kinds of things, and no one knows the size of that market. One last point, China, the Soviet Union. China looked at the Soviet Union when they collapsed, and they made a very astute observation. The Soviet Union, they decided, had lost its core spirit. And now I'm coming back to truth again. I think that that's a big deal. And I think that China's right. The collapse of the Soviet Union happened because there was no Soviet Union in spirit. They lost the why and the wherefore of we have a country. And we're at risk for this too. So I think this is a very important observation. It has a lot to do with 2026. Next generation everything. So that's coming up. What is it? One major thing that doesn't get any attention, I think it's too abstract, but it's very real, and we've written about it, is technology versus entropy. When things get complicated, it's harder and harder for them to talk to each other properly. When you have version 1 of this and version 1.2 of that, one library from this and the other library from that, we deal with this at Pattern constantly. It's a headache. So all the stuff you're working with has to be in tune with each other or they don't work well. I don't see anyone writing about this, but We're rushing toward a situation where the second law could easily make life prohibitively difficult just to mail a letter to each other, just to get a phone call, just to keep things from crashing. And so while people have jobs to stop that from happening, I'm not sure they're smart enough to avoid that problem. I call this the cyber trifecta of all this, where you have gigantic new bot armies. You've read about them today. 20 million found here by Google and shut them down this morning. 20 million, 10 million, it's like just gigantic numbers of bots under single agent control, agentic control. So you've got an LLM, running 20 million bots or more, and then you've got an LLM on top of the LLM, that's the agentic part, and they're running 10 bots. None of these things are perfect. And if they were supposed to be doing something, they wouldn't be able to do it perfectly. They make mistakes, they hallucinate, they have problems. And then last but not least, you've got all these things that are being sent out as pen tests where they are trying to find the weak point in your network or your PC or your router or whatever, and they're very good. So suddenly you've got tens of millions of probes per second or whatever worldwide trying to find the hole, trying to find the problem, and then bringing that back for attack purposes. I do believe that this just peaked like 3 days ago, 5 days ago. And I'd just be curious how you feel about it. But I have noticed that Microsoft right now, Office 365, is constantly reauthorizing throughout the day. I was running 3 computers yesterday. I couldn't get into Teams. I had 2 different accounts on 3 computers. I couldn't get into Teams. It was constantly like, what's your password? What's your damn password? I'm going to give you a number. Put the number in the thing. What's your other password? We're going to call you now. I couldn't operate. I literally couldn't work. I'm concerned that this is not a temporary problem. And I've mentioned this, but I would call it Microsoft and the miasma of authorization. It is truly a miasma. So we're in this new series of events, which is a global era. I would call it three-power instability, further degraded by the worldwide deployment of unreliable AI systems. That's 2026, I think. If we now jump down to landscapes, a little more fun. So CRINC, you heard about CRINC, is diminished now. Literally, China has taken it over. Last year when we talked, CRINC was a big deal. CRINC against the West. Well, it turns out CRINC is really China. It's just China. They're just trying to accumulate more and more people, alliance partners, into CRINC. They've used BRICS now, so BRICS is CRINC, CRINC is BRICS, on you go. But it's really about China. And China's role is more stark in pushing all available nations into this fold. Therefore, it's important to understand the Chinese model. And there's something I want to say about this which I think you'll find new. We were the persons who discovered the Chinese national business model when it was first moved into in 2003. We took it around the world. We wrote a little briefing book. Evan wrote the book. We took it around the CIA and all over the American intel system. We went with their help to the Five Eyes, including Germany and France. The Prime Minister of Australia did all this stuff. We were sure, because we did this, that we were the first to discover this. And we warned them. Well, that was yesterday. Yesterday was all about China being an infomercantilist model, which was aimed at America and at Europe with the idea of building upon the theft of intellectual property, heavily subsidized, put back into the global market, and destroy the inventors with the single goal of economic domination. That was true, and that was maybe 10 years ago and then till now. Actually, 2003. So now, though, I have a different name for what's happening. If that's true, it is, and if this is something that happens to China's prime trading partners, that's what they're there for. Our job is to be the victim. It's RIP, but not anymore. Then what happens when China gets so big and so good at this that every single trading partner it's got, not just us, is harmed? Because they're all engaging in the same way, with the same place, with the same model. And I'm going to call China a global economic parasite, with the definition that every single of its partners is harmed. This has never happened before that I know of. And so it's worth arguing about, considering. If it is true, what I'm telling you, then there is now a country for the first time ever which is a global economic parasite that harms every single one of its partners. And if that's true, we should have a little conversation about what to do about it. Also true, and I think you know this, China does not really have a domestic economy. Every time you hear, oh, now we're going to turn away from exports and worry about the consumer part. No, they're not. They never were, and they never will. That's not what China's about. Did I mention it's a global parasite? Because I mentioned, yeah, so, this is a very well-designed model that sucks the living financial life out of all of its trading partners. It's really effective. They're not going to turn back and try to get their people to buy more refrigerators. It's got nothing to do with that. It was never intended to do that. Just as a bank robber and a banker may look at money differently, therefore, China and the West have different views of money. If we look at Russia, two things are kind of clear to me. Putin will never quit his war with Ukraine until he has won. Period. If you're waiting for our side to win, and we call it our side, keep waiting. I don't see anything in his behavior. We don't look at talk, we look at actions. We never look at talk. We just look at what people do. And there's nothing in what I've seen Putin do that indicates in any way whatsoever that he's going to stop fighting and taking Ukraine. We could talk a lot upstairs about how that happened, because it's a very interesting story. And we're not blameless in this, I don't think. But it's a horrible story, and I think he's not going to quit. B, and this is going to get us into a little trouble, Putin controls Trump. We're back to actions again, not talk. At least based on past performance, this control appears to be complete. I can't think of a single thing that Trump has done that wouldn't upset Russia, Putin, or wouldn't have only happened by direct order, because they harm our country. They harm our national security. They do things that no president would ever think of doing. And yet they're being done. So I think we need to stand up and say, which everyone who stood up so far has been shot. Just pointing that out. Every single person who touched this Brer Rabbit thing got wiped out. Nobody survived. Didn't matter if you're the head of the CIA, you're gone. If you're the head of the FBI, you're gone. So it's a bit of a risk here. I can't help but point it out. And we've talked and done a lot of research on this. I can tell you that the British intelligence people believe this is true, and that it was caused by a financial transaction early in the life. And that part set the tone and set the agenda so it couldn't be recalled later or be allowed to see the light of day. Iran, I think the U.S.-Israeli attack on their nuclear facilities may in fact have either ended these activities or set them back much more than everybody believes. I think it was a complete success. It was portrayed at the time as though like, yeah, maybe not. I think it was a complete success. However, with 10,000 or so dead and counting, a reduction in their military proxies are the least of the Ayatollah's problems. So we've been very good, Israel's been very good at degrading the proxies, but that's not really what they're facing right now. And we'll see how that works out. North Korea, by enhancing its ties to Russia, has managed to gain leverage versus its owner and landlord, China. The nukes and the missiles sent by Iran are the reason why. Those nukes are not North Korean, they're Iranian. Those missiles are not North Korean originally, they're Iranian. They've been caught shipping from one place to another. So North Korea now has a completely new place within CRINC, which China doesn't like. Germany seems to see China as its top adversarial threat, with special notice of that posed by China's EV subsidization and export programs, which is aimed directly at the heart of the German car-driven economy. Together with increased spending on defense, this bodes well for both that country and for the EU. These are small but significant steps. Now this, I repeated one thing from a prior year. For the UK, I wrote last year, this is what I wrote. With Labour back in power, who didn't foresee a replay of the craven David Cameron Loves China show? It didn't take too many minutes before PM Starmer was sending love letters over to Beijing, hoping it would appear for more trade handouts, if only he would make nice. Stop it, Kerr, you're embarrassing everyone. And I just wrote, nothing has changed, which is a pretty good description of the UK in general. On the other hand, from Japan, we now have, in the person of Sanae Takaichi, Japan's new PM, we seem to have someone who is unafraid of China's threats and actions, suddenly heading into a snap election. How exciting to find a new leader in the free world who is willing to stand up and be counted. That's really true. She's amazing. I mean, among world leaders, she gets my vote right now. Pretty amazing. Australia, now compared to the rest of the Commonwealth, Oz remains a critical security partner, a focal point for Western defense plans in the Pacific. Now, if we jump down to major areas of technical interest and contest, I believe we need to identify the Valley Hype machine more clearly. They have done something which is a great disservice to the world by doing what I mentioned earlier. And I don't know what the penalty box is about, but in spending $1 trillion on a project which is destined to fail, or at least not meet requirements, obviously it's expensive for them, for their LPs, but it's expensive for everyone. You know, the water usage and the power creation and all the infrastructure is being built. If all is that based on a foundation which is faulty, there has to be some kind of playback here, pushback. And I'll mention one thing. Everyone knows who Sequoia is. I like them. They're one of the top 2 venture guys in the world. They had been standing really, really strong saying AGI is a big deal. We're going to put hundreds of billions of dollars into this. You know, it's our thing. And then the same people who were saying that 2 months ago just published a thing 3 days ago or 4 days ago. You can see it on the website. And so they were saying AGI, we're AGI pilled, if you know what that is. And today they say, we've redefined AGI. Quote, it figures stuff out, unquote. And I said to a friend of mine at Sequoia, I said, you know, my car does that. It tells me how many miles I got left in the tank. It figures stuff out. So this is really pathetic, and I'm glad they're making it obvious, but it's a problem. Chips and circular deals. NVIDIA has increased its vulnerability in 2 myriad ways. Its top 5 customers in cloud are now becoming competitors, making their own chips, and by moving directly into its users' markets, such as autonomous cars and drug discovery. If you want to wonder what happens to monopolies whose top customers become their top competitors, just ask Boeing how it feels about China. But don't ask in public. With regard to energy, I think the world is awash in energy today. Oil, gas, solar coming on strong, getting energy is not the problem at the moment, but getting it from the right places and so forth, that's a problem. We will either have a major cutback on data center build-out and or lots of extra energy once we realize the compute costs far outweigh the benefits of LLMs. And finally, healthcare. The rush to implement ChatGPT or GAI technologies has far outrun anyone's ability to prevent the inevitable, dangerous, and fatal mistakes that accompany hallucinations injected into healthcare. The Hippocratic Oath has just lost the near-term contest with Valley bullshit. The good news is that there will certainly be an acceleration in new administrative efficiencies and services. The bad news, the Valley mantra that quantity equals quality, could not be more wrong. So those are my cheerful landscape comments. And then to the top 10 predictions, and then we'll do some Q&A. Number 1, and I have to read these because I have to live with them forever and ever, amen. There clearly is no AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. It has been replaced by AGB, my term for artificial general behavior. Long live the king, a king that never existed. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman moves from his desperation tour into a kind of purgatory-like financial limbo while he gets to keep the great outfits and good hair. See, that's humor. Number 2, the infrastructure spending bender will lead to an overhang beyond any normal hangover. The good news, an abundance of limited but useful forms of human assistance in search/research and basic tasks, and plenty of energy for other needs. Number 3, electric vehicles become both obvious and globally effective as China's economic and technical weapon of choice, quickly taking over markets in the EU, the UK, Canada, Mexico, and every other nation not called the United States. It is a weapon. It's a weapon that represents about 30 different markets, all of which are key, and all of which were listed as the Communist Party's chief targets. So you've got, I've listed them many times, but you've got weight reduction, you've got carbon, you've got battery power, you've got computing, you've got LiDAR, you've got radar, you've got compute, on and on and on. All these things are in one product. If you win the market with one product, you win all these things at once. And the party is fully aware of this. So it is a weapon, and it's a very smart weapon. It's completely subsidized. No one's making money in China on this. No company is making a yuan on this. But they're totally qualified as weapons to go into Germany or into Europe or into any other country, Mexico, and destroy the economy there in terms of their car, their trucks, and so forth. So that's underway. Number 4, China is revealed to hold the new title of global economic parasite, a major upgrade in world threat posture from that of world-class infomerc IP theft. It earns this honor by harming every one of its trading partners. Number 5, continued healthcare increases in cost and inefficiencies will lead to real and large-scale alternatives as many more people are forced to move beyond institutional dependence toward an exciting and high-risk new do-it-yourself world of diagnostics and treatment. Number 6, the net continues to create increased massive social division, with AI amplifying this problem, resulting in increased global political moves to constrain both. Number 7, AI in the form of LLMs proves to be the ultimate job killer. This is not because LLMs are intelligent, but because they do automatable things, leading to huge socially disruptive layoffs. We learned that many of today's jobs, perhaps the balance of them, were all too easy to automate. Doesn't mean it's smart, it just means our jobs were like that. Number 8, the cyber apocalypse trifecta. Everyone suffers under massive new bot armies run in agentic attacks using LLMs, which find huge multiples of new zero-day attack modes matched with terrifically improved, hyper-tuned phishing. Right now, phishing is more important to these guys than the actual attack. You get a note from your mother with a picture from her and a little heart, and then it's something else, and you know it's her stuff, and it's got her email address on it, and it's not from her. Number 9, AI agents will evolve into famous celebrities in music, the arts, and finance. They will have personalities, i.e. evince human behavior, which they get from reading AGB, but they will neither understand nor think, which somehow could be an advantage. See, that's humor again. And then number 10, space moves from far to near. Rockets become like planes in their very busy launch schedules. The SpaceX Starship successfully returns to land on Earth, opening the transport path to the Moon and Mars, Tokyo, and Paris. And then I've got one more bonus prediction. Sports betting ruins the ethics of sports at every level, so no one can tell if any game has been fixed, and no one cares enough to stop it. The business of online sports betting grows at crazy multiples. And that's the end of that. So we can do questions if you have questions, or comments. We disagree strongly. And then we'll go upstairs and talk physics. or whatever you want.
Kind of a simple question, but what about quantum? Is that just too far out from 2026?
It's happening now. So I'm going to reframe your question with your permission. I've read that to be useful, you got to have about 1,000 qubits. So if you were saying, are we going to get 1,000 qubits this next year? I don't think so. And the bigger problem is the whole track we're on right now with, well, not everyone, but the idea of, actual 0 Kelvin, truck driving by 5 miles away makes the thing flare up. It's so delicate for 1 qubit that even with error checking under control, which might happen, having 1,000 of these things in tune, entangled, and not get disrupted, or how about 5,000, or how about 100,000? So it might be the wrong technology. That's my feeling. We'll build them, but I think you might build them at room temperature with something different, because there are ways of doing that. And I worry that we're on the wrong track right now. It was great as a pilot program, but it was never going to be a high production, I don't think.
So in one of the more interesting speeches coming out of Davos last week, the Prime Minister of Canada was speaking a lot about the middle powers.
Yeah.
You've spoken mostly about the great superpowers.
Correct.
What's your take on the emergence of the middle powers?
3 thoughts. I think he made a horrible mistake. Beautiful speech. Horrible mistake for his country. I like Canada. I think Mr. Carney is a better banker than a politician. I believe he was elected to stand up to Trump. That's why he was elected, and he did. Second point, we found out later that India was doing, and Europe doing a huge deal, which they announced day after Davos. He knew that. He wasn't being courageous. He was jumping on the train. The train was Europe and India, right? That's what happened. And so he gets not as many points as we all thought for being the courageous hero who stood alone. No, he knew this was going to happen. But they're all wrong. So you see these little deals, 49,000 cars into Canada. It's not about the 49,000. You just let the leopard into the children's kinder room. Why the hell would you do that? So even if you're doing it to mock the president or whatever, even if you have no choice, when you have no choice, don't do something wrong. Of course, within seconds, 100% tariffs on Canada, on every good that's made in Canada. If that actually happens, there is no Canada. They're done. I don't know what happens. They have to move here. There's nothing. I mean, I think you understand what I'm saying. They couldn't survive that. So the leader to take them into that risk was a fool. He knows what Trump's like. He's vindictive. He hates people standing up to him. He comes at him with a nuclear weapon or something. Everyone says he's a taco. He'll back off. That's a lot of risk. I don't think leaders of countries should take that risk. And I'll say it again. China's a parasite. You don't escape this lunar orbit story or whatever metaphor you want to use scot-free. There's going to be hell to pay for this. So it won't be 49,000. It'll be 945,000. It won't be 1 year. It'll be 10 years. It won't be all that stuff. That track, just like the UK track. UK doesn't, I once told somebody who was really important that you can't be a country if you don't make steel. Well, the UK doesn't make steel. No, I don't think. They let the other countries do it. Aluminum, steel. They lost all that. They had China in the middle of taking over all their power plants when somebody got rid of the Labour Party and brought in the other party. And was like, stop that. But they were in the middle of that too. It's like, what are you thinking? You're not thinking. You're thinking that China was just like they were in the good old days when we owned Hong Kong. But that's a different China. So I think it was a mistake. I would love to see Canada do well, but I would hate if I'll make a prediction. If he allows China into Canada, we will hurt Canada more than they know. We will drive China out. I guarantee we will drive China out. If we're driving China out of Venezuela, we're going to drive China out of Canada. So he made a mistake. Nice guy, made a mistake.
If you look at China, China historically has always done the same thing. I mean, there's the Opium Wars, there's there's no
The long history.
There's no change in China. This is not a new China. This is just a feudal China where it just keeps repeating the same thing. A bit like all countries, actually. All countries repeat a common pattern of cycles. But the one issue
By the way, I disagree. But
you can disagree. That's fine. But the one issue we have today is we moved all our manufacturing to China.
That's why.
And the business school said, shift all manufacturing to China. So a load of companies got pressurized by the great sort of thinkers in each country, actually, not just in the US, to move their manufacturing and their knowledge to China, because then
it's because of their business model.
Right. And so
they're not different. They're not the same because the business model is new and different.
Right. I don't think I have a question, but really I just see just common patterns. If you read about the Dowager Empress, that she did the same things as they're doing today. I mean, there are different characters involved, there are different structures, there are different things, but fundamentally it's not a different.
So we disagree. Now, I agree with you in the following way. There are long cycles of history in each of these nations that are repeated. Totally true. But let's put it this way, just to make it easier. Let's say that as a result of one of those cycles this year, there's a nuclear war. Well, that's not the same thing as before. So there are differences in the tools and techniques that make for a qualitative difference in the story. In this case, the invention of this business model for a country, which wasn't Chinese, it was Japanese, then it was South Korean, then it went to China. But what China had was a dictatorship where they would kill people. They didn't do what they were told. And so they didn't back down, couldn't back down, and hit the gas on that. And that presence of that model in a free world is totally capable of destroying it. And proof is already in the pudding. It's already done. So these movements of middle income people from all over the world, what wasn't because China had a resurgence in anger or something. It was because the model ripped them out of there. And it was made for that. That's why it was created. So I think we have an area of disagreement there. Yeah.
We have time for maybe one more question.
Oh,
We have at the back.
me. Sorry. Okay, I would really love to know what your predictions are for the workforce, given that you said AI in the form of LLMs will continue to kill jobs.
Yes.
So what is your prediction for how the workforce will evolve from that?
It's a very general question. It's like saying, well, all the people in America and the rest of the world do when they're... The way I have of thinking about this, two steps. One is this really about LLMs? Kind of, but kind of not. And I always think of Twitter. When Elon he didn't want to buy it, by the way. He tried to get out of that deal. But when he bought Twitter, he did something that no one thought would happen. He fired 80% of the people and nothing happened. Now, any board group around the world that was watching probably had a meeting the next day going, does that mean all of us should do that? And, the answer was kind of yes. So I kind of blame it on the jobs themselves. That's why I use the word automatable. I think the people are smart, they had skills, they were doing great work, but if they were doing a job that was automatable, that's a lot of jobs, then they're at risk. Not their fault, but they're definitely at risk. So the first part of the question is, if it is, it's going to get much worse than it is now. It'll be like Twitter. No one wants to talk about this, I guess, out of the valley. If 80% of the workers today in all the businesses that were white-collar-like were fired, laid off, what world is that like? And then to come back to your real question, which is what world is that like, right? you hear people from the Valley, and I'm not a big Valley booster, you can kind of tell, saying like, we're going to have a universal basic income, it'll be fine. Don't worry about anything. In the talk about history cycles, in the history of everything that I know, when was the time when, where's Alan? When was the time where the rich people gave all the money to the poor people because they wanted to? That didn't happen. And so UBI has a dream that the Valley cooked up to make them feel better about what they're doing, but it doesn't make the world better, in my opinion. I think it's a joke. And therefore, you know, what does happen is there are revolutions. People get guns and hatchets and stuff. They go out in the street and they kill people. That happens throughout history. And I don't know how it's going to turn out on this one, but I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't believe it'll be voluntary where people just go, here, take my money because you're poor. I haven't seen that happen. People certainly are philanthropic, which is wonderful. I'm glad they are. But on a social, you know, I think of Sweden, for instance. Sweden kind of like that, right? If you go to the Nordic countries, they have really taken their social contract seriously. And it's an inspiration. I'm 7/8 Swedish, so I'm proud of it. But I have a hard time seeing that happening on a large scale. I hope it does, but I don't believe in it. I think it may take more difficulties. I mean, if 80% of the world were laid off, think about that. It's a world we wouldn't be able to recognize. Maybe it takes 5 years or 20 years, but it does feel like that's the direction. I hope that people get retrained, which is the other thing that everyone says. Certainly there will be more jobs to do with, you know, agentic AI and all that stuff. But I'm not sure that it's what you're talking about or what I'm talking about. And I think we're done with questions, right? Are we done?
We are done with questions.
But we can talk to each other all night upstairs.
We will still. Brenda really wants to ask a question. Can I let Brenda ask
Go
a
ahead.
question?
Brandon Cooper, everyone.
Mark, you called it a year of accelerated disruption and all of the
Instability.
and instability. And it felt to me as if your predictions, which I've learned not to disagree with too much, are not too positive.
No.
It really doesn't feel like a good year. So is this setting us up for something better? Or is there something more light in something that you see? The only one that really felt there was much light in it maybe was just breaking the medical system enough that maybe we'd begin to fix it. So how is this going to lead us to be able to fix the systems that we have and to be better?
Well, sometimes you have to find out, admit what's wrong to fix what's, make it into something what's right. Right now, we have to stop listening to Sam Altman. We have to stop listening to AGI promises. Throw that in the garbage can tomorrow morning. Stop putting trillions of dollars worldwide into his dream and start going, well, what's a better dream? That would be terrific. And I think people are kind of halfway ready for that, based on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So, you know, we've got the leaders saying that was wrong. We've got to change course here. It would not be impossible to harness the same avid passion that people seem to have for AI at the moment. Many of them hate it, but still. Passion. Passion is better than sleep. So if they're passionate, maybe that would be enough to drive towards something much better. Now, here's what I get to do, and I did not pay her for this. My little ad for Pattern Computer, where we are using not LLMs, and we've created 24 pipelines of cancer drugs against the top 5 cancers. And we have a new way of finding colorectal cancer potential patients among the under 49 or 42, where everyone's dying. It's now top cause of death in the United States. So we're trying to use a better tool that they call AI to do really great stuff. And it's not magic. It's, you know, it's doable. We're very proud of our engines. So they're magic, but there'll be a lot of companies. There were companies starting up today, this morning. They call themselves Neo Labs, and they have no products. They don't know how they're going to build them. They have famous people on board, and they're getting funded like crazy out of the valley. Well, good. Come on in. You know, water's fine. And I think that getting away from LLMs, getting toward that, is a wonderful thing. And so I'm not discouraged that we'll go in a good direction, but I'm trying to do my best to make sure we stop going in the wrong direction. All right.
All right. Thank
Let's
you
go
very
play
much.
upstairs.
Can I get a big round of applause for this gentleman right here, please?